Angela. Just FY, let's get started. All right, good afternoon, everybody. Good evening, actually. This is a joint special meeting between the City of Boynton Beach and the Community Redevelopment Agency of Boynton Beach. Welcome. Today is Tuesday, January 14th, 2025, and the time is now 6 p.m. After we conclude with this special meeting, we will continue to a second meeting, our regularly scheduled CRA meeting, and we will take a 15-minute break in between the two to allow staff to transition and to set up. Let's begin, first and always, with our rules of decorum. Public comments must be addressed to the chair and not to any particular individual on the dais or in the audience. Personal attacks, insults must not be.
Mute your laptops.
I'm sorry, we're experiencing some technical issues.
The volume thing off. Turn it off.
No, it's not this one, it's the city
Oh,
one.
that one.
We'll wait until the technical issues are handled. All right, thank you so much. I hope that resolved it. Personal attacks, insults, disruptive behaviors are strictly prohibited. Speakers must first be addressed by the chair and not interrupt any other speaker. And of course, should you violate these rules, I will provide you a warning, and should you persist, I may have to ask you to leave our meeting. Thank you so much. Let's proceed to our roll call. City Clerk or Deputy City Clerk, if you could please begin.
Mayor Panserga,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kelly,
Here.
Commissioner Cruz,
Here.
Commissioner Hay,
Yeah.
Commissioner Turkin. Not here. Mayor, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. For agenda approval for this particular special meeting, are there any questions or comments from my colleagues? Vice Mayor, do you have any questions or comments?
Thank you, Mayor. I just noticed that we didn't allow for any sort of public comment in this small meeting, so I was just going to request that we add public comment under,
Great, I completely agree with you.
okay, perfect.
Let's do that, and I would recommend that the order in which we take this is that we allow for staff presentation first, so we, as the board, as well as the public, can hear that information, and after which we'll entertain public comment, and we'll turn back to the board for discussion.
Perfect.
Does that sounds good?
Sounds good.
All right,
Thank you.
thank you so much. We have a motion to approve the agenda as discussed.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second. The second came from Commissioner Hay. All those in favor of approving the agenda as discussed, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes and we've got a meeting. So let's turn now to our city staff. This item here is a discussion and update on the potential relocation of the Andrews House.
Good evening. I am Rick Hoffer, Assistant Director of Public Works. This is an update on potential relocation of the Andrews House. Okay. I'll start by presenting the potential relocation sites, followed by discussion of project timeline for design, construction, and moving of the house. Then presentation of budget level probable costs for the project. The Andrews House, just to give a little background, it's located at 306 Southeast 1st Avenue. Potential relocation sites for the house for preservation purposes have been assessed. 3 potential sites will be discussed as part of this presentation. Next. Actually, the prior, yeah. This slide reflects the current location of the Andrews House as well as the 3 potential relocation sites. Next. Potential location 1 is on Northeast 6th Avenue and Northeast 6th Court, and is currently a small city-owned park. It is zoned CBD. The next slide shows a street view of this potential location 1. And going to the next slide, this is a concept site plan reflecting a potential location of the house on this site here. Current permitted uses for this property include, as are reflected on the right-hand side of this slide. Shown are permitted uses for office and civic. There's also a handful of other categories. I've expanded the list for both office and civic, so everybody can see, permitted uses of the site. Going to the next slide. For potential location 2, this is a CRA located owned lot on East Ocean Avenue. Same lot as the Magnuson House and is zoned R3 multifamily residential. To the right, one can see the approximate limits of the property in the green square for reference. Next slide reflects the street view of this potential location 2. It's a bit difficult to see back onto the site where the house could be located, but the next slide will give a little more clarity on this, I believe. This is a concept site plan reflecting a potential location of the house on this site. Building code based on the type of structure, as would be on the site, 2 wood frame structures, require 20 feet of separation. Before we were looking at a 10-foot, but based on some determinations we got recently, and based on building code flat out, is it needs 20 feet of separation. In addition, there could be requirements to upgrade the fire ratings of the walls of the Andrews house, and I believe also with the adjacent structure. So that does, the way this is shown here, this configuration, one can see the green square, which generally delineates the property. It can be seen that that's to the east is beyond the property line. The adjacent there is city-owned right away. Just wanted to note that. And there are some potential possibilities to reorient the house, and different locations on the site could be potential. Just wanted to note that this is a orientation location that's been shown, and that has some issues. So not insurmountable necessarily, but definitely some issues. Moving to the next slide. This is potential location 3. It is a CRA-owned lot on North Seacrest Boulevard and Northeast 3rd Avenue, zoned residential R2, which is single and 2-family residential. Going to the next slide is a street view of potential location 3 of this potential location. And going to the next slide is just a potential site plan, just to give a scale of things. Could fit on other parts of the site, but it's a pretty large site. Put it on there for discussion purposes so everybody can see the scale. Definitely fits on this site. As far as permitted uses are on the right-hand side, and really are highlighting the residential, commercial, and civic potential uses for this site. There's also some other ones which I didn't, on this one I did expand them all. Sometimes the list gets pretty long. So one can see the permitted uses. I'm going to the, this timeline, actually, yep, that's good. This is basically a planning level project timeline. We estimate about 2 months to procure design services, followed by 2 months for historic designation, and another 2 months for design site plan, to design the site plan. Just to note though, you know, design of the site plan and historic designation could happen maybe simultaneously or close to simultaneous as shown. Historic designation, I believe, can also be done on the back end of the project. There's some flexibility there. But after design of the site plan, there's the approval process of the site plan, design, final construction documents, then building permit. We have a month in there for that. Procure construction services, 2 months, and construction relocate house of 3 months. So there's, you know, I would say approximately 16 months in there, give or take a month or two. You know, for this, you know, planning level construction schedule or project schedule. Going to cost, we've since over the last week or so, we've done some additional work on costing of the project, doing budget costing, got some more data points, got some more input. So it reflects a bit differently. We also added a 25% contingency, which is something that for budget level pricing is you know, industry standard to add contingency. There's a lot of unknowns on this. One thing I did want to say is, you know, everything that's shown here is basically relocation and construction. Things that aren't included is any upgrades to the house itself, any upgrades, improvements to the house. You know, for its potential different uses, you know, could have requirements for, you know, ADA compliance possibly, depending on what the use is. There could be some fire code requirements, life safety requirements. You know, as far as the condition of the house itself, plumbing, electrical, it's not totally clear whether that's up to code or not. We don't know that for sure. Whether there's any requirements there. Really an assessment needs to be done. And that would be done when there could be some preliminary assessments done with through hiring consultants to get better numbers on this. There's different ways to do it, but this is budgetary level. One can see it's a subtotal of $300K, and with the contingency, $375,000. With that, staff is here to answer questions.
All right, thank you so much. And just to be clear, Kevin, did you have anything to add, or that was it? Okay, so let me turn to my colleagues. If you have any gnawing questions for our staff member here, if not, if you can wait, we can turn to public comment, but if you have anything urgent, he's right here in the podium. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you for your presentation. Just a quick question. How did we get the budget for these fees? Did we maybe get quotes from consultants or quotes from companies that are in the business of moving these types of homes?
Yes. Okay, I'm sorry. Yes, we got quotes. We also had some data points from CRA that was involved in some house moving over in Delray Beach, so we used some of those as data points for design and moving and construction. So we used different sources. This is what we did. Yes.
Do you happen to recall the CRA that you're referring to? Like, how long ago was that move? Was that recent, within the last year?
It was quite some time ago. It was at least 10 years, 15 years, but we did do some adjustments, and we just considered it. We didn't We didn't say that's the number. So we had different sources of information and used our best judgment at coming up with these numbers. And, once you put it out for construction and design and start negotiating with consultants, there's a lot of variables in that and what type of pricing you'll get back.
So, not for anything, but just making sure. So the quotes that we're getting were potentially 10 years old for the?
No, we got some brand new ones as well for the move of the house, and the other quotes are, was 10, 15 years old, I believe. But we used that as a data point. It didn't change things much, from the last presentation due to the CRA number that we got, and we had a lot of input from staff, from the staff architect. We got some input from our staff architect, who is kind of an outside professional and very engaged in the field, and gave us estimating. He does a lot of our estimating internal, so we've checked with him and other sources throughout the department, planning and zoning, and got a lot of input internally as well.
I remember maybe a couple of years ago, we did have a presentation with the CRA a while ago, and I remember the city of Pompano Beach also had a pretty large house that they moved, so maybe, I don't know if that's something that we can potentially look into to see, what they might have paid, but I think that was a little more recent than the one in Delray. But thank you. I just wanted to get an answer about the cost, and we know that it might potentially go up. Is there a possibility for us to get like a direct quote from like a few companies to say, this is the size of the home, this is what we want to do, what would you charge me to provide this service?
We did get a direct quote of it was $75,000 to $150,000, and we upped that a little bit on the low end based on some other data points. But we would welcome any other input or sources. The more data we have and more information we have, the better we can, better pricing we can give for this. So
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Vice Mayor, you had a question as well?
Yeah, I just had one quick question. This might be more directed to Adam, but when we're talking about the location of the Magnuson House, I know that there's some issues with property line, and location of the home on that property. What is the timeline, or how long would it take for us to make the accommodations for that lot to work for the home? Like, what are the things that would have to be done in order for that lot to be able to house an additional home at this point?
Commissioner, Vice Mayor Kelly, I'm sorry. Adam Temple, Assistant City Manager. So as you saw on the lot, where it's currently where it would currently be positioned based on fire separation, according to our fire marshal and our building official, it does put a good portion of the property outside of the property boundaries. So I believe that the property to the east of that is public right-of-way. So we would potentially need to vacate or abandon that. And then even doing so, we would probably need to do some variances on some of the setbacks as well. So as far as a timeline, those types of things we can do relatively quickly within several months, I'd say.
Okay. I'll reserve my comments until after public comment. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Vice Mayor. Commissioner Hay, did you have any immediate questions for now?
Just to lead off with, the $375,000, that's the estimated cost for one move, right? I mean,
Correct,
just
yes.
to move it first time.
Oh, no, that's the consultant fees for design, developing the site plan.
Yeah, but still,
All that,
it
relocation.
all adds up into a one-time move.
It is.
And do we have a feel for what the maintenance would be on that per year? to keep that house in some kind of shape versus how much it's gonna cost us now to leave it where it is and maintain it?
As far as I know, we have not looked into that. It's something that could be looked into. I don't know if any staff has any input on that, but I don't.
That is something that would be of interest to me. How much would it cost on an annual basis to leave it where it is and keep it fixed up until such time as there's a plan for that versus moving it and potentially having to move it again? How much would it cost us after we move it the first time? And then and then maintain it on an annual basis for such time as we have a plan for that house?
Tim, were you about to chime in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Tim Tack, Acting Executive Director for the CRA. You know, we, in our CRA activities, we look at maintaining properties. You would be looking at roughly 10 to 15,000 to get that buttoned up. You would be looking at boarding up, sealing it up, you know, possibly painting it so that it still has its curb appeal, as well as potential fumigation, pest control, that type of thing, so that you can mitigate the amount of degradation that is occurring, because currently it's not being cared for at all.
That 10 to 15,000 would be to bring it up to city standards, correct?
Forgive me, I didn't hear you.
Yeah, the phone there. You mentioned 10 to 15,000?
Yeah,
That would be the bringing up to code or bringing up to city standards? Or
that would not be bringing up the code. That would just be merely putting some curb appeal to it and possibly slowing down potential degradation of the structure itself.
Yeah, I'll reserve the rest of my question for later after I hear the public.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Before we go to public comment on this item, I just want one quick question from me. If we could go to the timeline slide, I just want to make sure I understood the timeline. Now, here, if I counted those months correctly, it's over a year.
Yes.
Depending on location, does that affect any of these durations? In other words, you know, is this set for all options, no matter what we do? This is the timeline? Is that the intent here? Or the
I would answer in general terms for planning purposes, yes.
Okay, and is there anything, and does this have to be the order? Like, is this set in stone?
From my understanding, historic designation could be pushed maybe to the end, possibly. That might save a month or so,
Okay.
possibly. You know, there's always potential for saving time in schedules, but this is, we believe, a good baseline budget level, planning level schedule.
All right, well, thank you for that information. All right, let's turn now to public comments. We will begin with those in the chambers, after which we will go to those online, if there's any online. And if you're representing a group, if you'd like to state your name for the record, and also if you're representing a group, feel free to mention which group you're a part of. Let me switch to the timer. We do have 2 podiums. Begin when you're ready and state your name for the record.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Barbara Reedy. I chair your Historic Resources Preservation Board, which met last night and had the same presentation and made 3 recommendations that I would like to present to the City Commission tonight. The first recommendation is that the city/CRA pursue ownership of the building and also ask the developer to donate whatever fund he was going to use to knock it down to go towards the moving of it. That would be the first recommendation. The second unanimous recommendation was we selected spot number 2, which is on Ocean Avenue, the place next door to the Magnuson House. Also, the third recommendation would be that the use be considered light commercial or a public use of some sort. We would prefer light commercial. My personal preference is so that we can have some economic development strategy things going on downtown, create a destination. The city has been able to grant itself variances for this very building. You had to grant yourself a variance to have setback from the sidewalk. So the variance problem is not insurmountable, as Richard just told you. I would like to see it set back on that lot next to the Magnuson, so that we could create a courtyard for people visiting the museum, visiting the cultural center, moms, dads, grandmas, kids, walk down the street, have an ice cream cone, a soda, a smoothie, a hot dog, a cold sandwich, whatever. All of the people that visit our two historic buildings get in their cars with their wallets and leave. We heard the other night that if we can get people to hang around for 4 hours, we can get them to spend more of their money. So your board recommends those 3 things, and I hope that tonight you will seriously consider it. It is an economic development strategy, and I think the citizens would approve as well, because it's about time that the city leaders start listening to the residents instead of staff. Thank you.
All right, next speaker.
Hi, Susan Oyer, Boynton Beach. Yes, I am part of the executive committee for the Move Historic Andrews House. I am a life member of the Boynton Beach Historical Society. And of course, as you well know, I'm a former member of the Historic Resources Presentation Board, the P&D Board, the Arts Board, and the Sustainability Board, as well as being, a grand pro at attending your meetings for several years. So again, last night, as Barb said, Barbara Reedy, we were told about a fire marshal report or a fire report. So I immediately put in a public records request for that. It turns out it's actually just an email. So that's a level of deception coming from, the city employees about this entire thing. I will say that the demo was signed back on 11/1/2024 because I have a copy of it after much haggling with the city. And it turns out Amanda never informed the Historic Resources Preservation Board a couple weeks later that there was a demo permit out when they had discussions about this house during their board meeting. She had promised in multiple prior meetings, because I have the minutes, that she would keep the board informed of things and never did. So that's another level of deception coming from certain staff, because I'm certainly not lumping the entire staff in this, about what's going on with this building. As Barbara mentioned, and as everyone in our group will tell you, there's a huge economic development opportunity with this house. Look at what has happened in Delray as an example. Look at what has happened all over the country. Whenever you incorporate historic buildings into your city and put them to use. So I would like to say my things that I think you should do in the order I think you should do them in is we need to make sure the ownership of the house transfers to the city or CRA. That is number 1. Number 2, we need to move this over by the Magnuson, which is now option number 2, maybe creating a heritage-style village. Number 3, we need to look at the orientation options, because the way the city has, or 1 or 2 people in planning have presented it, it makes it look like this will not fit. And if you reorient the house, yes, it will fit with plenty of extra room. That's a choice by that person to make this look bad. We need to historically designate this, and we need to make it a destination attraction. And yes, we need light usage, whether you want to put like a cafe. We were promised when the city hall was opened, both the city and the commission, that we would have some type of cafe place for the residents and employees to go. That's never happened. This is your perfect opportunity to make this a light use location, whether bakery, ice cream, sodas, gourmet sandwiches, bring stuff off-site and have it available for sale there. You certainly don't want to make an intensive use building out of a 100-year-old building. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
Former Commissioner McCray, City of Boynton. I just want to say, if you're going to move it on Ocean Avenue, make sure that you have the hours of operation. Make sure it's open on the weekends. We have a lot going on here in this city. That would be a fantastic place to advertise what is going on. A lot of the times, the marquees are not working. If you notice, we're still in December, and right now we're up in January with happenings here, and nobody's advertising. Years ago, we had a place, what was called the destination, what we had were our Chamber of Commerce. people needed any kind of information coming to this city, they had one spot where they can go, get information about any business that was going on here in this city. If the city's going to invest some funds, why not we invested a place for us to do some advertisement for what's happening here in this city? We're losing a lot of revenue. People are going in and out because they know not what to do. You're going to use our funds, the citizens of Boynton. Let's utilize it wisely. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Mike Fitzpatrick, 175 Southwest 2nd Street. I guess I'm the chair of the Move Historic. All right, you saw this picture on the slide, and this is too big, it's not gonna fit, that's what we're being told. It's a little puffy. It looks almost the same size, it's not. On January 2nd, I sent the commissioners, this is on page 2 of that report I sent. This is that picture. You can see it was orientated this way. There would be 16 feet between point to point, not even sides. And if you turned it so it faces east, this, I believe, is the preferred by our group now. This is the entrance facing east, facing the sidewalk. It would create a, back, a quiet place. We think that would be the best one. And point corner to corner, point to point, this is 28 feet. So that would satisfy the fire marshal. So there's ways of doing it. The city staff doesn't seem to want to look at those ways. There's a lot of points that could be made on the presentation, but it's not enough time to go over it, and I think we'll research it a little more. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next speaker.
Hi, Valentina Broglia. I just wanted to, everyone touched amazing points last night, and I don't want to repeat them. And I did want to mention that a lot of people go to St. Augustine to visit the oldest schoolhouse. Why can't they come to Boynton Beach and visit the oldest structure in Boynton Beach? So I do think it will bring in a lot of economic value. As far as the budgeting that we were concerned about earlier, I did just want to mention that in historic preservation, when a house is designated or a structure is designated, you can apply for an ad valorem tax exemption, which would reduce the costs, and then ADA requirements are actually waived on a certain amount, and also FEMA recommendations can be exempt as well. So if the city would want to designate the structure first and then move it over if possible, that's one way to go about it. Another thing I wanted to mention was that last night, the historic board also recommended that location 2 would be the best potential for the Andrews house. And I think those are all the points, and on top of what everyone else has said, so thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Ginger Peterson, and I'm on the executive committee to move the Andrews house. So I worked 35 years in public administration at Palm Beach State College. So I know all the little tricks of the trade when things don't really want to happen, so let's make it super expensive. So I've done all those things, and I've been a part of all those kinds of little tricky things that happen like that. So that's what I looked at those figures today. Let's make it $500,000 and make it even sound worse. I think that's disingenuous, because I think there's definitely a lot of groundswell to have this happen. And we appreciate the time that you guys are taking to have this happen, because I think it's there has to be something to get the downtown going. I found an article today from 1960 saying of a plan to revitalize downtown Boynton Beach. It still hasn't happened. In spite of all the promises from developers and from big people, we still sit here with basically one thing of interest downtown, which is Hurricane Alley, pretty much, after all this time. So you have a rare chance here to create something to connect the history together of the 2 historic schools and also these 2 houses. And there's lots of uses. It's not something that we want this to be an economic driver, not something that's going to cost the city a bunch of money. As far as yearly upkeep, that should be rolled into whoever pays rent on this place. So, and then to just throw it in some piece of property and have it become who knows what in a neighborhood makes no sense to me. And we looked at, today, we looked at those, we know the other sites. The only one that really makes sense is the Magnuson site, and we need to designate it. I was on the board for 9 years, and this came up time and time again about designating that house, and it still hasn't happened. And if it's true that the board was never notified that the house was up for demolition, that's really also very bad for the person running that committee. So I hope we can get something done here, and we've already got our fundraising efforts started, so we're willing to pony up and make it a real groundswell to save this house, because it's a beautiful little house. It's to our history of a farming community, and I just don't think we can just wipe everything off the map and say it never happened, because that's just not what makes city history real, like St. Augustine and other places. It's not going to be an economic drain. It will be an economic driver. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Excuse me. David Merker, former city commissioner. I personally want to truly recommend Barbara Reedy, Susan Oyer, Mac McCrae, Mike Fitzpatrick. I had the pleasure and the opportunity to serve with them. Their knowledge on history, the history of the city, is greater than probably 99.9% of all the people who live in the city. So I strongly recommend that the commission open their eyes, open their mind, and listen to them. They know what's right.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Flynn Holland, and I'm a resident of Boynton. I live on 618 South Seacrest Boulevard. And when I look at this piece of paper, and you talked about its purposes
Flynn,
in the
could you
building.
please speak
I'm
into the
sorry, that's
That's-
right.
yeah, we need it for the
always
record.
the way. We want it to be a community building. We want it to be a historic community building that the community could go into. When I listened to his report, what came to mind for me is, have any of you had a tour of this house to know how much work had been put in it? Have you read Mike Fitzpatrick's piece where he's already done all of this work to show that it was renovated up to 2005, that it was closed up, but by no means is it falling apart. It's made out of cypress. It's not bug-proof, but it definitely has staying power. We would love it to be a coffee house, a tea house, something that we can go to, because what we're finding now is the town has lost those things. And when we got the high school, we felt that there was going to be some sort of eatery there, some reason for people to come together. The library is great. I love the library. The Culture Center is kind of underutilized. We're going to have a movie theater in the gym, never happened. This is a gem. And when I look at what they consider things like a real estate office or something, that's going to close up. And as you've seen, you've given money to small businesses that last a year and then they go out of business after they've gotten the money from you guys. We would love to see this to be something that is for the community, with the community, and show the arts and the history. I just went to the Del Rey Historic Society. We will not be that, but oh my gosh, the support that they had for buildings and the history that we have here is just phenomenal, not to bring it. Somebody also said that the children's place fulfills the history of Boynton. Well, that's for kids. But the adults, we have so much history and so much knowledge in the community to be able to give back to it. So I do like the place by the Magnuson House. Mike Fitzpatrick looked and saw the possibilities of how it could be moved and everything. I'd really like you to look at the information and energy that other people who really want it to happen can work with you to make it happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello. My name is Brittany Patterson. I own businesses in Boynton Beach. My father worked for the city for 30 years in this very land right here that we're in. I was not planning on saying anything tonight. However, I just want to express that I feel like it's super important for the city to invest in historic buildings like this. I mean, it's like we need to invest in the community. I think that Ocean Avenue would be a great place to relocate if the building needs to be relocated. And I do want to say, as my father was in Recreation and Parks Department, he was a supervisor of athletics for all of those 30 years. And I saw firsthand growing up here how building the city of Boynton's community, like it was a very enriching experience for the residents. And I think it could be a really wonderful draw to continue to reinvest in downtown. I've also worked with the CRA on getting grants for my business, also hooking up other companies with the CRA, and I have seen how investing in this manner has really brought great economics to the city. So I would love to see something wonderful happen with this building, and I've seen a lot of other buildings coming up here that are new, but there's a lot of value in preserving historic. So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Good evening. I can see by your expressions, you know this is a feel-good project.
Could you state your name for the record, sir?
I'm sorry. My name's Tom Warnke. I'm the vice chair of the committee to move and save the Magnuson House, and I'm also the CRA liaison. At last week's commission meeting, staff used an example during the presentation of the historic building, of a historic building in Pompano Beach. Right here in Delray, where I work at the Historical Society, we've got 2 buildings that were both moved a mile onto the Historical Society campus. They're both very old wooden buildings similar to the Andrews House. They sit about 12 feet apart, and they're both Dade County pine. The city invested $20,000 this year to build us a wooden tool shed in between that would match the architecture. So obviously the Delray Fire Marshal has no problem with the homes being close together. I walked it today and measured. There's 70 feet from the Magnuson House to the sidewalk to the east. There's 70 feet from the Magnuson House to the back fence. So there's plenty of room there, especially if you turn it 90 degrees and have the entrance off that public walkway. That way the sunroom would be to the south and face Ocean Avenue. I'm the one that gave the quote from the house movers. Where I work in Delray, we consulted with PEB Capital. They're doing the big project on the corner of Atlantic Avenue in Swinton, and that is the home of the Cathcart House and also the rectory. They moved both of those. I talked to that house mover. He said, based on 1,600 square feet, 75 to 150,000 is plenty. And those moves were 2 years ago, not 15 years ago. So I wanted to correct that. Since I work at the Historical Society in Delray, and we've got these 2 cottages on 1 acre there on Swinton, we have events all year. It's definitely an economic driver. We have groups of 400 people there sometimes, caterers, bartenders. I mean, it can definitely be something that happens in downtown Boynton, especially as a tea house, a coffee shop, and all the interior could be all of Boynton Beach history. We're adept at doing that, and it won't be expensive. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker.
Excuse me, Board Chair.
Yes.
If we could have everybody at the other mic because of the recording of it, that would be great.
Sure.
Thank
All right.
you.
If you could please move over to the next podium, please, on the other side, and that goes for all speakers that may come up. Yes. Begin when you're ready and state your name for the record.
Good evening. My name is Mary Law. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay. I wrote you a letter today, but the people out here haven't had a chance to see it. Mayor, commissioners, CRA, and others, again, I write to all of you to save the Andrews house. It doesn't seem to be all that complicated to save that house. One, move the house to the CRA-owned Magnuson House property, which is close by, and therefore the moving costs should not be that expensive. And it will then be in the center of many art exhibits, the old high school, the old elementary school in the downtown area on Ocean Avenue. Two, the house appears to be in excellent shape. Some immediate costs should be, A, tent for drywood termites, which costs might range from $4,000 to $7,000. I recently paid $4,000 to Command Pest Control to tent my real estate office at 625 South Federal Highway. B, immediately repair and secure the front door and the back door and keep them locked. Also, put on combination lock boxes. Repair any broken windows. C, do an inventory in order to keep all those who enter honest. 3, request that the owner and/or the developer pay the moving costs. Mary Law, the Law Building, 625 South Federal Highway. In closing, I just want to make a couple of comments. I like to see things happen faster. And you have a developer that would like to do the development there. He's got this old house sitting on his property, and now all the citizens in Boynton are getting aggravated about. I would go to him and see if he will just pick up the closing costs. And I don't think they're going to be that high compared if you put it on the Magnuson. You're only going to go down a street or two. I don't think there's any power lines to move. I think it could be done quick. I would get that house off his property and onto the Magnuson with a site plan. It couldn't be that difficult. Then worry about all these other details later. I'm not so sure that developer has been paying, I don't have it in front of me, but the fire assessment, water bills, and a few other things, I don't think that house has had any expenses been paid on it. I would suggest that the staff gets a hold of old business people, people that have been here a long time and care about Boynton. I would get the estimates from them first and then follow through and see if anybody else wants to be cheaper. I think maybe sometimes we overpay for things. I would listen to Mike Fitzpatrick for development shortcuts.
All right.
And Tom Warnke.
Thank you so much.
Whoa, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very
All right.
much.
Thank you so much, Ms. Law. Okay, is there anyone else in the chambers? Let me go to those online. I believe Mr. Grant, it says public comment. Mr. Grant, would you like to comment on this item? Since you're online, I will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining. You may begin when you're ready.
Hello, can everyone hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. Stephen Grant, Northeast 3rd Avenue. I'm different from everyone here. I believe that Northeast 3rd Avenue site would be a good place. It would require a lot less work for the property. One of the things that was not mentioned is the amount of funds needed to bring the Magnuson House up to date. That place has been sitting there for 15 years and has not done anything. I feel that it is a great place for a live-work space, and that this is something that the city and the area needs, is more places for people to live and work. I understand a lot of the community feels that this could be an economic driver. They are correct. We were promised a cafe at City Hall and the historic high school, but that was never delivered. We are being promised 22,000 square feet of retail upcoming CRA meeting. So I believe that is going to be what's going to drive people coming to our downtown and keeping them there. I think the city and CRA are doing a great job with the events. I remember when I started being mayor, we had the amphitheater and movies where tens of people come and now we have hundreds of people coming on our first Fridays. So thank you for this decision to save the historic Andrews House. I think the easy choice would be to put it onto Northeast 3rd Avenue.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Grant. And I don't believe anyone else is online for this item. So with that, public comment on this item is now closed. Let me turn off the timer. I'm going to turn back now to the board for their comments, questions, anything of the sort. And I do want to just kick it off by saying that, number one, as many of you already know, as you've heard me say in the previous meetings, I fully support saving the Andrews House. I think that it can be an economic generator. It can be an asset for the city, and I share the vision. I'd love to see a cafe or a flower shop or a small business go in that place. It could be a woman-owned business. It could be a minority-owned business. It's a local business, and I don't want to lose that opportunity. Now, the reason why we're here today is because a demolition permit was approved, unbeknownst certainly to me. I'm not sure who else knew, but I certainly didn't know about it. And so what that does is put us into a time crunch. And so now we're rushing, and what we've discovered is, maybe the numbers aren't quite right. We need more time to get a better sense of the actual cost. And I'm also seeing from the slide that's in front of us now, and as I've asked the staff, no matter what we do, it's going to be a significant amount of time regardless. And so I want to save this house. I just don't want to rush it so that we end up doing it wrong. And, we may have to move it again. And we don't even have anyone yet ready to use the space. I would love to put out an RFP to signal to the business community, say, hey, we've got this opportunity here, we've got a location, what can you do with it? Is there a small business ready and willing to take it? And what kind of improvements do you need so we can get some feedback so we know how to invest in it? And I've said in the first meeting, an adaptive reuse of this building is how the CRA can be involved. The CRA in its capacity is about turning around our local economy. That is the fundamental premise. So I'm 100% for that. I just don't want to rush it to get it wrong. And I don't want to spend a very large amount of money, and I know there's some dispute on the exact amount, but that just adds to the argument. We need some clarity without getting public input, without doing an RFP. And I know there were many speakers here tonight. I met public charrettes where we go out to the community or potentially do surveys. I want to spend that money wisely. I want to spend it once because I don't want to move it, then move it again, and then something fails. Let's do it right the first time. But in order for that to happen, we cannot be under a time crunch. And I think that's the fundamental problem. If we could get more time from the developer, and I think it should be feasible, because I haven't heard anyone say it here tonight, but the developer who owns the land isn't building anytime soon, right? That project is part of their phase 2. There should be no rush. We should have more time. And I'm going to share, is that all right, Tim? That there has been a conversation with the developer, and they have shown, and it's not final because it's just an initial conversation, willingness to provide additional time. And I think that is a good thing. Because if we can have additional time, we can do the steps right. We don't have to rush it. We can put out an RFP so we know that we move forward accurately with the right numbers, with the right use, and we have the right location. So that's where I stand. I want to save it. And I think if what I'm hearing is correct and it stays true, that the developer is willing to work with us and let the house stay where it is for additional time, and it's showing here on the slide, we need at least a year. If that holds true, we can do this right and have a really successful project, see a potential small business flourish here. All right, so that's where I am. Let me turn to my colleagues if you have any thoughts and questions. I'm not sure who's ready to go first. Commissioner Hay, you want to go?
Yeah, I basically agree with the chair. That's why I asked the question about the cost and the maintenance. If we move it or if we don't move it. And as you heard, the developer is in no rush, no hurry. because this is phase 2 of his own project. And I like to say that, you know, we have a master plan which we just kind of put on the shelf and just let it collect dust. Does it really fit into our master plan? We need time to look at these things. We're not really, I don't want to rush into this. I do want to save the house, even though I don't have really a dog in this hunt like most of you do, because my feeling is, I mean, you save it. You're saving it for what? Okay, just for memories. Sure, it would be nice to have the house there, have your little kids asking questions. It could be an asset. I have no problem against that. But I do like to say to you, I wish you guys had been around some time ago when the African-American culture was being eliminated from the school books. And we stood there trying to fight that, and there was no real support. And now I'm glad to see as many of you come out and trying to fight to save this historical piece. But I tell you, it's just, when you look at what's happening around the country, Confederate images are being taken down. And to me, this was way back 1907. I would not have been safe, because we just got rid of 3 laws that were on our books that had been there for over 100 years. And that would have, if I had been caught over at where the Magnuson house is right now, I might have been hung from one of those trees that's in the front yard. You know, I'm just being real here, okay? And I would have loved to have seen you guys come out and fight for the Black history to remain in our school books, as you are doing right now. I commend all of you for what you're saying and what you believe in. But again, I just say to you that we don't need to rush this. There's no reason that I can see right now, because there's no real plan for this house. There's no one jumping up and down and lining up to say what they want to do with this. We have time to do it, and to do it right, okay? I don't want to move this house, then turn around and have to spend taxpayers' dollars again to move someplace else. To me, that's not good use of my dollars and your dollars, is to do that. Let's take the time, work with the developer who seems to be working with us, okay, and to do this thing right the first time. If it's worth doing, do it right the first time. So my position, here, let me say this also. We're trying to develop Ocean Avenue to be one of our major entertainment, whatever you want to, adjective you want to use to describe it, in Boynton Beach. And I don't want to see it just be a bunch of old houses. And right now we have, what is that, the Jones House? I've said this before, it's nothing new. We have the Magnuson House, and now we're going to get another Andrews House, whatever it is. Okay, I mean, how many more? Let's look at our master plan. Let's see where we're going. Let's plan this thing out right. Not just move off of emotions and just react. Let's respond. Let's look at it, take our time, and address this the way it should be. I think it's a win-win. I really do. But I think I feel you're pushing me, and the decisions are not in concrete at this point. So all I'm saying to you is that let's just take our time, okay? Talk to developers, see what the best way to approach this. Get the numbers right. We don't have those things as far as I'm concerned. Maybe everybody else, but I don't. And I want to make sure that when we move, we're moving together, collectively, soundly, the best decision that we can make. I think we won't have to worry about the house being torn down, okay, because we caught it in time. And the developer is working with us. So let's just put our heads together. We got a bunch of good heads up here, okay, and out in the audience. And see what really is the best thing for the city to coincide with our master plan that's already on the table, and make sure we're just not hodgepodging again. So as far as I'm concerned, I would say just leave it where it is and get the numbers to bring it, to sustain it, and for however long we have, then we can address it down the road. But we don't have to move that house right now. So I say just stay where it is. I don't want to move it on Ocean Avenue. I'd rather it be 3rd Avenue maybe, okay? But my first priority would be to leave it where it is, and let's take our time and approach it correctly.
Thank you, Commissioner Hay. Very briefly, in response to that, if my understanding is correct, that the developer is willing to put a stay, we would need to move forward to direct staff to go ahead and put that in written language to make sure we have it on the record. So that's it for now from me. Vice Mayor, let's turn to you.
Thank you, Mayor. I share some of the sentiments that have been shared by my colleagues, but my concerns are we're looking at an approximate timeline of a year. My understanding and my conversations with staff is that the owner of the property, although he's willing to work with us, he is not, as I understand, cannot enter into any sort of formal agreement with us or the CRA due to his own agreements or with his funding or financing or whatever. And then my understanding was that he was willing to extend it, but I don't know how long. And so my concern is if we continue to have conversations and try and figure out the use and try and figure out the location, we're going to end up looking in 9 months at starting at something that a process that's going to take us a year to get to. And so I am of the sentiment that the faster we can move the property off of not our land, and then take the time to figure out what to do with it, and then figure out what the use is going to be, the appropriate use is going to be. I know that that will incur additional costs, but as the community has said, they are willing to work with us and fight with us on, on this project that my conversation with staff was that some of this stuff can also be done simultaneously, and it's not something that this is like we have to wait 2 months and then go to the next step, and then that takes 2 months, and then we wait 2 months. But that's my concern, is that if we do wait to vet this further, that then we'll be a year in, and then he's going to want his land. And I know it is phase 2, but there's planning processes and there's demo processes and there's things that have to happen in order for him to move to the steps that he needs to for whatever's happening with his company or finance or whatever. So my thought is, and I don't know based on what the use would be, what location is most appropriate. I understand the sentiments are, let's put it next to Magnuson, but I made my position clear at the next meeting that, or the last meeting, that the Magnuson house has sat vacant for so long and with, very little interest in improvement and usage of that. And so to just stick another house there, just to put another house there, maybe as a temporary location until we figure out the appropriate use. But my understanding also in finding out the cost is without a location, we can't get a good cost, because the moving companies need to know where it's going in order to determine whether lines have to be moved, whether, traffic signals have to be adjusted or moved. So there are things I feel like we have to decide in order to get a true cost estimate, in order to then figure out what the next steps are going to be. So I agree in that I think timing-wise of finding the usage, I think that that has more time to be vetted. But my concern is that if we do not move it now, then what do we do in 9 months when then we have figured out what to do with it, but we don't have a year to then go through all of the processes to get it ready to then move?
Great point, Vice Mayor. I'm along the same lines as you. I just kind of envisioned the timeline a little bit differently. I thought they would occur in parallel. So for example, if the developer really did put into writing a commitment to put a stay for a whole year, or maybe a little bit more, that we would begin this process. We can select a location this month, today, this month. We can begin the process, and while the process is moving forward, with the location already selected that will allow us to compute some precise numbers, that we can simultaneously put out an RFP. So it's not like we begin the process and then figure out the use. I think we can run them, and really that's a staff question. Is that something that can be done from a staff perspective? Can we run the RFP concurrent with this process that's shown on the timeline, or is it one after the other?
Well, this is not the RFP part of it, but
That's right.
this process
But
is
could we
not
do an
linear.
RFP in
I do think
parallel?
you could. I think,
Okay.
I don't see any issue with that. And we'd have to craft the language in the RFP to make sure that we're not awarding or putting something out or getting people's hopes up, or they invest money into a RFP, which, then doesn't come to fruition. So obviously, we'd have to craft it to where it would, but I do think it could run at least some simultaneous or a little off past, like maybe 30 days after, so that it's coming together.
That would need to happen, because if it doesn't, then Vice Mayor is correct, and then it's actually even longer than a year, and then this wouldn't work. I agree. And all of this is contingent if the developer puts into writing this commitment, right? So I'll go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Thank you. Yeah, those are my concerns, is that then we're then up against a different timeline. But I agree, Mayor, if it's something that could be done simultaneously. My feeling is also that this should go on to a CRA property, because for the exact point that you made, is that the CRA is in the business of improvement and economic drive to an area. And so I think the CRA is more poised to take on a project like this and kick it off and get it in the right direction. Those are my points, is that I think that we do need to move this forward in the right direction, because my understanding with Tim today was that in his conversations with the owner is that he won't agree to do any formal agreement, because based on some stuff in his back office that he can't do. So those are my concerns, is I feel like we really need to push forward with getting it moved to protect it, and to make sure that we then have the opportunity and the time to vet proper use and do an RFP process and get some interest. And as much as I would love to see, and hope that the RFP process is successful, it may take time for our downtown to build up in order to get the right use and the right person and business into that home. So I feel like we may have to make a decision where this may be a two-step process or a two-move process, because of the timing and because we don't have any way of taking ownership of a property that's not on our land in order to protect it.
Yes, good point, good point. Thank you, Vice Mayor. A brief question for staff. This is on the area of land that's slated for Phase 2 of the project. Can someone tell me, the board, how many years from now will they actually need to begin constructing Phase 2? Do we have some clarity on that?
Good evening, Mayor. I'd like to ask Amanda Radigan to come up.
Okay.
Good evening, Mayor, City Commission. Amanda Radigan, Planning and Development Director. The original Phase 2 of the Villages was approved in 2017. Now, from more recent conversations with the developer, he is planning to do a major redevelopment, a major site plan amendment to that original, which essentially means it's going to go back through the process. So it is very much unknown how he's going to move forward yet. Staff hasn't seen a revised proposal submitted yet. We've seen a couple of conceptuals.
Do you have an estimate from your experience? Are we talking about a year, 2 years? What's the likely?
I think in this specific case, it's going to depend largely on the timeline for phase one. That project is about to be permitted, and we are hoping to break ground on phase one shortly. If everything goes into plan with that one, I think in terms of his own financing, it might expedite phase two, but it's really difficult to tell. I think the developer would be the best person to give us that timeline.
All right, thank you. That answered my question. Vice Mayor, was there anything else?
No, that's
Okay.
it, thank you.
Commissioner Cruz?
All right, thank you, Mayor, and thank you all for your feedback. I think the first thing that we need to do is to prevent demolition from happening. If we don't do that, obviously we're gonna be in a tough situation. The next thing I wanna bring forward, the attention to is for us to get the historical designation officially, while preventing the demolition. One more thing that I would like to do is to do a citywide survey so that we can get feedback. I know we have a few people in the audience and we appreciate you guys being here. At the same time, the city has, almost 90,000 residents, and we want to hear from everyone as well and hear feedback on what, the residents might want to see. So I would like to ask if maybe my colleagues would agree to do a citywide survey of, the potential uses to see what the public thinks. One thing that I also want to think about is once we have the historical designation, we could potentially apply to grant dollars that will allow us more funding to be able to be utilized for this purpose. And it would be a way to prevent us from using all of our money. We would have to maybe match. But I also wanted to also think about staff to look into potential grant opportunities that would be available to us if we were to have that historical designation, and maybe share that with the commission and seeing what we could do to potentially get those grants. The next thing that I think we should look into is figuring out the real cost of what it would take to bring the house up to code for someone to be able to occupy it, whether it's a business, assuming it's a coffee shop or ice cream or whatever it is that we end up moving forward with, a museum, whatever it is that we end up deciding, how much would this potential individual business or entity would have to pay to bring it up to code? Or is that something that we would consider, I don't want to put it out there, but is that something that we would look into kind of meddling with ourselves? Is that something that we're just going to pass on to the potential owner with, as you mentioned, an RFP process? And then now the last thing that, really thinking about is intent matters when it comes to using CRA dollars. We understand that the purpose of the CRA is to reduce slum and blight and also to increase economic development. So with that in mind, if the purpose and the end in mind is to provide economic development, then we would need to have a business in there, and that would need to be kind of our purpose before we move the property so that we can use the CRA dollars. If we were to use it for any other purpose, then it's probably an attorney question, but it might get into a bit of muddy water. So that's something that I wanted just everyone to think about, the economic development perspective of potentially moving the house. Thank you for one of the residents who came up to show the different ways that we could move the house to potentially, ideally, maybe make it happen. We're not maybe at that point of deciding where we're going to move it yet, but if it were to be feasible, if it were economic development oriented, and if it were something that the board would agree to, I'm not going to get ahead of myself, but I would potentially, if it was allowed by the fire code, and also if it's something that would be reasonable with our staff and with planning, then I would be open to looking at the opportunity of moving it over to the Magnuson House. So I think, I think there were many good points made earlier today. Some of those are figuring out what we're gonna do with the house, protecting it from being demolished, putting in that historical designation so that we can actually apply to grant dollars so we can get some more funding in, and being fiscally responsible at the same time.
All right, thank you. Were there any follow-up comments from each other? Go ahead, Commissioner.
Just a question for the Historic Society. Have you given thought to locating or creating a historical district in Boynton Beach?
Could we have a representative from the historical, either from the advisory board or from the Historical Society to answer that question?
Barbara Reedy?
Barbara Reedy, I chair your City Historic Resources Preservation Board, and I'm also on the board of the Historical Society. So I hit on both things. And yes, we have made efforts to create a historic district. Just down the block here, there's cute little historic homes. But we set up our program so that we don't force communities to be designated. The people get to vote. We need a 51% ownership vote to proceed with making it a historic designation, please. So does that answer your question, Commissioner?
Yes, is there any thought of moving the Andrews House to someplace in that area that you thinking about or designated?
I think the locations that the city and the CRA were looking at were properties that the city already owns. And I don't believe we own any properties down in that neck of the woods. I don't even believe there's any open properties that we could buy down there. I mean, the thought of moving it next to the Magnuson is to retroactively create like a heritage district, okay? It would not technically be an historical district. It would be, we could call it our heritage district. And the reason why we need to move it now, I think, is that, I don't know if you're aware or not, that we don't own it. The developer owns it, and he controls it. Your Historic Preservation Board has been trying for years to get it designated, years. We've done all the steps, we've made all the motions, we have the written report from July of 2023. We've been trying to get it designated. The owner has been fighting us. He does not want it designated because he believes it would not allow him to demolish it. And that's how we got to where we are. So we're kind of at a standoff. You know, we would love very much to designate. You Commission, CRA Board could do it tonight. All the steps have been taken.
The area that you're talking about, Barbara, is that West Ocean Avenue? That
Yes.
little area down there?
Yes. I believe it's Northwest First.
First?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You should drive on down there. Darling little homes. Absolutely darling.
I have, okay.
The bad part is that the north side of that block is also been rezoned by the CRA. It's all commercial now. If someone were to come down Boynton Beach Boulevard, a developer, and purchase those blocks, all of those little historic homes on the north side of Northwest First, gone. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're good? Is that good?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
I guess the logical use for that at this stage until we find out more information would be, someone brought up like an informational system, center for the city where you have an out area, tables, benches, and kids playing, eating ice cream or whatever they said. And have it be an information booth where it could have other selling of foods or something. But I think we have time to look at those things, and that's what I'm talking about. Let's not rush into it. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner Hay. As for me, one thing is absolutely clear for me. I know there's still some questions about the numbers and the time, and when exactly is phase 2 starting, but in order for this house to have a chance, we need more time. That is absolutely clear to me. And so if I have the support of my colleagues, I would like to at least direct staff, city and CRA to work with the developer to secure an agreement if possible. And I know they still have to figure out when exactly phase 2 and how much time the developer is even willing to do. I think that's number one. If we have an agreement to put a hold on the demolition, then this gives it a chance. And then we can talk about everything else. We can talk about an RFP. We can talk about what we do with it temporarily and how we can secure the location. And if there is support for that, you know, I think we need to do some bare minimum things. I believe I was told that the residents had to lock up the building. There were no locks because, of course, there's going to be liability concerns. I'm sure the attorneys can appreciate that. So as we proceed and have further discussions about its future, I think those are bare minimum. Again, if there's consensus to direct our staff to work with the developer to secure that agreement to give us more time. So, all right, that's step one for me. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Adam, is it the demolition permit, can the owner withdraw the request for the permit? So at the very least,
Yes.
can we at least move towards getting the demolition permit canceled or withdrawn?
We can, Vice Mayor Kelly, we can certainly have those conversations with the developer. There are a number of things that he could do with that demolition permit. He could let it expire. He could withdraw it if he wanted to as well, and he could later reinstate it if so be the case. But as far as the city is concerned, there's the city is unable to cancel or revoke that permit as it exists today.
And what's the
So it would have to be up to the developer.
Okay, thank you, Adam. What's the timeline or what's the expiration date of that demolition permit as it sits
I
right
believe
now?
somebody mentioned from the audience that the demolition permit was issued in November. If that were the case, then it would expire 180 days from that date, if no inspections are approved.
Okay. Mayor, I support moving forward with conversations with the owner to either, at the very least, ask him if he would be willing to withdraw his application for the demo permit. I think that might buy us the time without maybe forcing him into some sort of agreement that would prohibit him from doing other things he needs to do potentially with phase 1. But to have those conversations with the owner, as far, to buy us time, and in the meantime, work on the timeline. I know that obviously, the historic designation is probably something that's gonna have to be pushed off until we own it. But I think that everyone on the dais is in agreement that that's something that will happen eventually down the line once the city or the CRA owns that home. But to start moving forward with this so that we can get a better idea of the cost plan and also just knowing that the home is protected until we have time to vet the options a little bit further to make sure we've done our due diligence on this.
Completely agreed with you, Vice Mayor. However, the exact mechanism to get us more time, I'm comfortable with it. Because like I said, with more time, and again, there's really no real rush here, right? They're not building anytime soon. That'll give us more time to get this right. Mr. Temple, you had your hand up?
Mayor, the only thing that I would add is I'm sure the property owner would probably want assurance from the city that that a designation would not take place prior to him withdrawing his demolition permit. I can only assume that he would want that assurance or protection.
Okay, let's keep going. Commissioner Cruz?
Thank you, Mayor. I do support you with your request to work together with the owner. And I did want to reiterate if we could get consensus to do a citywide survey to see kind of what the residents would like to see.
Yeah, that's
all over.
agreed.
And then while we're working with the owner, could we simultaneously work with staff to see it's not that we're making a decision, but we just want to see if it's feasible or not feasible, to see if moving the magnet in next to the Magnuson house in a different angle, potentially a 90-degree angle, would actually genuinely work or not. That's something that I'm personally interested to find out from our staff, so I would like to have some feedback report, an email, some sort of information as to, you know, is that a real possibility for us simultaneously as we continue to work with the owner. It doesn't mean that we're moving forward in that direction. It just gives me more clarity to understand if it in fact is or is not a possibility.
Sounds good to me. More information can't hurt.
One last.
Go ahead. Absolutely.
Statement for legal, based on what we have shared and what we know now, have we covered all of our bases? So there's something else that we need to decide tonight or make a decision on? You know, I just don't want to be exposed if we don't have to.
I think the most important thing is really getting that timeline for his plans and see if we can't come to an agreement. As Adam Temple mentioned, he's probably going to want us to also, in addition to agree not to designate it or nominate it as a historic designation, he may want us to insure it, to protect it while it's on his property. And also the liability with keeping it on his property, supporting and securing and all of those things.
Yep.
So I would imagine that's probably something he's going to want. My suggestion would be, let's allow staff to work with him, and then once we have an agreement to terms, then that would be brought back to the commission to not just review the terms, right? Because then that just puts us further down. But let staff come up with an agreement with him that we believe, based upon your direction, the commission can live with, and then bring that back for approval. And then if there's a condition you don't agree with, then, you know, we can go back to him. That way it saves us a little bit of time, gives us more time to get things moving. And by then, we should have your survey back, which will also help you guys determine where, and it sounds like there's kind of, correct me if I'm wrong, consensus to move it next to, or at least get some hard costs on moving it and what that entails, even if, you know, just getting those costs is not that big of a deal, but an assumption, you know, what would we need in terms of, because moving it alone is not enough, right? What else needs to be done to just, even if we move it temporarily, so to get some better costs, and you know, depending on the cost, what that is, you know, your procurement process may be triggered unless the board decides to waive it. So we might have to get a couple quotes with regard to that. If not, we probably don't have the time to do an invitation to bid for that based upon the timeline, but those are also things maybe that the board will have to decide at some point.
Just wrapping up loose ends, is staff clear on direction we're going here?
A little more clarity as far as if we're doing anything as like a feasibility study to move it to the Magnuson house. Because I don't think anyone from staff would disagree that it would physically fit. It's what would be required, what would be waived, what codes in there that we're gonna have to, you know, you have handicap parking, you have elevator. There's a lot of different variables that go into this. It's not as simple as it fits. I think anyone in this room would say it would physically fit, but I may have to vacate right away. We may have to get exceptions. We may have to do a variance. There's a lot of different things. So if that is the direction of the board that they would like to see it, then I would ask that you guys would come to consensus to allow us to spend some money to hire an architect to do a feasibility study and get a survey conducted. Because we really need an updated survey. I think the last survey on there is probably at least 6-7 years old. I don't know what's under the ground there. I don't know if there's sewer. Because I mean, I think there's an alley that runs behind the house, and then you have an alley that runs on the east side of the house. So there could be underground utilities. I don't have that on the top of my head. We were asked to bring back potential locations and a budgeted cost, and that's what you got. We, based on the information at hand, that's what we're delivering to you. So if we want more detailed information, then we need to spend a little bit of money to do that.
Thank you for that, Andrew. And on that note, because you mentioned the survey components, would it be fair to say that that would be equally useful to know for the Magnuson House?
Sure, yes. I mean, any project that you do for Magnuson is going to require updated survey within 6
Okay.
months, no
All
matter
right,
what.
so it's like, it sounds like we're getting a twofer if, if we do this. I'll support that, absolutely.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you.
do we have clarity? All right, is there any other final comments from my colleagues?
No, thank you.
All right, so please come back to us with more information, what the developer says and those terms. All right, thank you, everybody. Thank you, staff. Thank you to all the residents who came and spoke. This is progress. Again, we did have a soft agreement. We just need to get it in writing. All right, we will now come to a conclusion. Again, we will resume in 15 minutes for the regularly scheduled CRA meeting. If there's nothing else, 15, 20? All right. Yes, if we need to. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn this special meeting?
So moved.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, thank you so much, everybody. Again, give us at least 15 minutes. Staff needs to transition to our regularly scheduled CRA meeting. Thank you.